You should just find some cheap apartment and live there. You don't have the right to live in this house if all you do is play around at home, do you? After returning from the city, my sister-in-law tries to kick me out of the house where I live with my in-laws, intending to take over herself. My in-laws, who don't understand working from home. My husband Aaron, who wants to take the house from me, and my sister-in-law are all against me. Together with my sister-in-law, my husband Aaron and my in-laws blame me. Who do they think is paying the mortgage for this house? Suddenly, I wonder who will pay the mortgage of $2,300 per month if I leave this house. There's no reason to continue living with these people when I feel so miserable. If they want me to leave, then I will. My patience has finally reached its limit. I'll change the ownership and the mortgage to my name. I told my husband Aaron this, and then left the house after divorcing him, who was overjoyed. Subsequently, my husband and his family faced an unexpected situation. My name is Courtney. I live with my husband Aaron, whom I met during my time as an office worker. We met at the company where I was working. Although it was not a workplace romance. Aaron worked for a cleaning company that serviced my office. When I met Aaron, I had just lost both of my parents. First, my father's illness was discovered, and the doctor gave him 3 months to live. While I was nursing him, my mother also fell ill and passed away despite the struggle. Being an only child, I suddenly found myself alone, struggling to accept the reality of my parents' deaths. I often found myself tearing up whenever I thought of my parents. However, I tried to keep smiling at work, so that those around me wouldn't notice my grief. When Aaron first spoke to me, I had stepped out into the hallway for a break, and was reminiscing about my parents as I gazed out the window. Though I had seen Aaron during work and nodded in greeting, we had never spoken. And I didn't even know his name. Yet, Aaron approached me and asked, "Are you okay? You seem a bit down." With his gentle inquiry, I ended up talking about my parents to him, perhaps comforted by the fact that he was a stranger. Aaron, understanding the loneliness of losing parents himself, sympathized with me. I was grateful that he listened. Eventually, we started having brief conversations at work and soon began meeting outside the office. It didn't take long before we started dating, and he introduced me to his parents soon after. As Aaron had told me, he was close to his in-laws. They were considerate of me losing my parents and would always say, "Come visit us anytime." I quickly became close with my in-laws, and without a formal proposal, Aaron and I naturally progressed to marriage. After getting married, we rented an apartment near his parents' home and lived there together. After some time, I quit my job and switched to a company that allowed me to work from home full-time, thinking of our future children. Although I had informed Aaron of my job change, it seemed he didn't quite grasp it, understanding only that I was working from home on my computer. Despite the job change, my salary remained the same, so I decided to cover the living expenses. Since Aaron earned less than me, I would cover the living expenses while he saved most of his salary, which he previously spent on social activities before we married. Aaron didn't have expensive hobbies, and his spending before marriage was mostly on dates with me or going out with friends. He had told me to leave the savings management to him, so we managed our finances this way. Working from home was all the more beneficial for me. What I loved most was being able to enjoy meals leisurely with Aaron when he returned home. If I had still been working at my previous company, this wouldn't have been possible. Before marriage, I often made simple meals just for myself. But now I found myself wanting to cook elaborate dishes to please Aaron. Our daily life passed peacefully this way. One day, several years after our marriage, an unexpected event occurred: my in-laws' house, where they had been living since my great-grandfather's time, caught fire and was completely destroyed. Fortunately, my in-laws were unharmed, but the house and all their possessions, including photo albums and memories, were lost in the fire. My in-laws stayed in our apartment for a while, deeply depressed by the loss. I wanted to cheer up the two people who had helped me heal from the loss of my parents. So I did everything I could to make them feel comfortable. I cooked for them and managed the housework between my job commitments to ensure they felt at home. On weekends, Aaron and I would go out with them, but they seemed conscious of being a burden and struggled to regain their usual smiles. They often expressed their concern about staying with us indefinitely. So Aaron and I decided to build a house to live with them. Although my in-laws had never mentioned living together before, we had always considered it eventually. For this reason, I had been saving from my salary, separate from what Aaron was saving. We thought it was better to build the house sooner rather than later, and proposed the idea to them. They were delighted, and the plans were quickly finalized. The house they had lived in was a charming wooden structure built during my great-grandfather's era. As they aged, they started to experience various physical discomforts. Because of this, my in-laws had many requests for the new house. Aaron, wanting to make the most of building the house, suggested adding various features, which ultimately increased the cost significantly. Still, since we would be living there for a long time, I convinced myself to accommodate all three of our desires. I began to feel something was off around this time. Aaron was overly eager to assert to my in-laws that it was his house being built. And my in-laws kept thanking him, even though the house and mortgage were in my name. I used my savings for the down payment, but it seems Aaron hasn't told his parents about it. His constant claims that it's his house are forcing the in-laws to demand that I show gratitude to him. I do appreciate him. Not because it's all about money, I simply contributed more financially because I was able to. I don't pay in hopes of gratitude from Aaron or his parents. However, Aaron does not defend me when his parents repeat these demands. Instead, he jokes, "That's right, you should thank me since you're living in a new house." Repeatedly hearing these distortions of truth has been frustrating. I understand that Aaron has his pride, so I don't expect him to tell his parents everything. But I've asked him to stop making it seem like I do nothing. Yet it seems he's too caught up in the excitement of the new house to listen. I've also discovered that Aaron has been lying outrageously to his parents. He's been claiming that he works at the large corporation I used to work for. Although Aaron still visits that company, the truth about his job is quite different. This realization of his lies and inflated pride has deepened my distrust. The in-laws favoring Aaron has made me feel uncomfortable. I hoped that once we moved into the new house, the discussions about who built it would cease. So I endured silently. However, once we moved in, their behavior towards me changed markedly. It seems they, like Aaron, don't understand remote work and think I'm just playing on the computer all day. Aaron has even complained to them that Courtney does nothing but play all day. And they seem to have believed him. They didn't say much before we moved, but the snide comments increased after the move. Aaron built such a magnificent house, and you just stay in and play. Must be nice. Why don't you work a little and help Aaron out? They would even come into my room while I was working to make these snide remarks. This discomfort led me to frequently leave the house to work from cafes. I repeatedly asked Aaron to clarify the misunderstanding with his parents. Although he doesn't understand the work I do, it's my salary that supports our lifestyle, including his parents. I told him just to convey this to his parents. However, Aaron responded, "Just let them say whatever they want," and did not listen. Because they think I don't work, all household chores have been pushed onto me. And the in-laws have started treating me like a servant. This situation has made it difficult for me to do my job, so I finally confronted them. Aaron was there, and seeing how upset I was, I hoped he would support me. Instead, he shouted, "Don't talk back," and even threatened me with a filled-out divorce form, saying if I didn't comply, we would divorce. Having never seen him raise his voice before, I was completely intimidated and ended up yielding to him and his parents. From that day, both the in-laws and Aaron's attitude towards me turned cold. The only time I felt seen as an individual was when I was at my computer, working. I tried to forget their treatment and immersed myself in work. Then, one day, Aaron's sister, who had been living in the city, came back to visit. She came to see the new house and ended up staying for a while. Right away, the in-laws started complaining to her about me. Courtney is always cooped up in her room, playing on her computer. Who does she think allows her to live in such a nice house? What exactly are you doing on that computer? Playing games? It's creepy if you're some nerd. We don't really understand, but maybe she's one of those nerds? If she's always at the computer, she must be, right? Isn't it shameful to not work at all? To escape their loud conversation, meant for me to hear, I retreated to my room. There, I overheard something shocking. Wasn't Courtney just a cleaner at Aaron's company? How could she lie about working from home? She couldn't possibly have the skills. It seems Aaron has twisted our roles, telling his parents that he works at the large corporation while depicting me as a mere cleaner. The liar is Aaron. I wanted to confront the mother-in-law and sister-in-law with the truth, but given everything, I doubted they would believe me, so I felt resigned. After the sister-in-law's return, my place at the dining table became hers. And I could no longer eat with everyone at the same time. I listened to everyone enjoying the meal I had prepared between work tasks, while I was secluded in my room, working alone. This went on for a week until the sister-in-law was supposed to return to the city. However, she suddenly declared she would stay. It's quite comfortable here, actually. I just quit my job, so I'll move back here. The sister-in-law had been working in apparel, but decided to take a break due to exhausting relationships. Seeing the rebuilt family home, she found the new house more luxurious than expected. It might be good to start a business here in the countryside. At my level, I can work anywhere. The in-laws were thrilled by her words. Aaron seemed pleased to be praised for the house. However, there was no room specifically for the sister-in-law. She had been staying in the guest room, but if she were to live here, another room would need to be prepared, and there were no spare rooms in the house. The sister-in-law had realized this after a week's stay. "I'll live here instead of you." She told me this with a mischievous grin. "You don't deserve to live in this house if all you do is play around. Find some cheap apartment and live there. But this house is mine." That's right. You do nothing but stay home all day. The mother-in-law supported the sister-in-law, leaving me no chance to argue. I tried desperately to explain my work, but the sister-in-law, who had just stated that work could be done anywhere, refused to understand remote work. "I haven't been outside, so I'm not working?" Such an absurd argument is being used to pressure me. Given everything that has happened, I've become truly furious. Aaron is just laughing this off, not bothering to tell the truth. Until now, I remained silent considering his position. But I finally told his parents and sister that this house is in my name. I've paid for the mortgage entirely by myself, and I also provide for our living expenses. The down payment came from my savings, and Aaron hasn't paid a single penny. With that said, even Aaron seemed flustered. However, all that came out of his mouth were words of insult and self-preservation to hide the truth. He yelled at me, calling me noisy, to shut up, a liar. Aaron was clearly panicked, and it was obvious he was hiding something. Yet, his parents and sister defended him and called me a liar. No matter how many times I said it wasn't a lie, they wouldn't believe me. Then I thought, if I left this house, who would pay the monthly mortgage of $2,300? There's no reason for me to continue living with these people if it makes me this unhappy. If they believe this house, which supposedly Aaron built while working for a large corporation, should be his, then maybe I should just let him have it all. With that thought, I decided to sign the divorce papers Aaron thrust at me with the intention of threatening me. When I offered to change the house's ownership to Aaron, he was so thrilled he almost danced with joy. He must have thought the house was finally entirely his. He's not wrong, but he is mistaken about one thing. We tried to change the mortgage to Aaron's name, but he was reluctant to handle the complex procedures and told me to go alone. You listen to the difficult explanations. It's just changing the name, right? Just get it ready for me to sign it. Since that wasn't possible, I dragged the reluctant Aaron to the bank and to see a solicitor. During the explanations, he didn't listen and fiddled with his smartphone. When it came time to sign the documents, he finally became eager. So signing this will make the house mine, right? After confirming with me, he eagerly signed the documents. Once all the procedures were complete, the house and the mortgage were finally his. I explained it several times, but I wonder if he really understood that. Aaron joyfully reported to his parents and sister. Even then, how could they still believe that Aaron worked for a large corporation and I was unemployed? I watched the situation unfold with disbelief. After changing the ownership of the house and the mortgage, I submitted the divorce papers. We're going on a trip to celebrate, so you should move out while we're gone. Once the paperwork was finalized, Aaron took his parents and sister on a ridiculous divorce celebration trip. They went abroad and wouldn't be back for about 10 days. During that time, I sold all the furniture and appliances I had brought into the house and loaded my belongings into my car to leave. Having also looked for a new house in parallel with these procedures, I moved into my new home as soon as I packed up. The place I chose for a fresh start was the top floor of a high-rise condo. It was a coincidence that this condo, worth $3 million, was available. But the timing seemed so perfect, I decided to go ahead and buy it. The past few years had been restless because of Aaron and his parents. So I was excited about my new life. In fact, I had an inheritance left by my deceased parents. Before marrying Aaron, I had invested this inheritance. And what was meant to be just pocket money turned into a huge success. Now worth several $1,000,000. I had planned to use this money to live comfortably with Aaron after an early retirement. I kept this wealth a secret to surprise Aaron, but I'm truly glad I never mentioned it. Had I spoken up, his parents and sister might have come after my assets as well. Living with that family, I understood all too well how reckless they were with money. The house I lived in with Aaron and his parents was designed according to their tastes, not mine. Moving to the high-rise condo, I took the opportunity to create a home with my preferred interior. Now, surrounded only by things I love, I have created the perfect space. Best of all, there's no one around to make snide remarks, so I can enjoy working from home. Once things settle down, I plan to attend cooking and yoga classes. I've finally regained a peaceful mind after years, thanks to this newfound freedom and fun. Aaron called me the night they returned from their overseas trip. He must have noticed the furniture and appliances were gone. He demanded I return them, but I refused. I bought all that with my money, so I can do what I want with it. I didn't want to leave anything of mine in a house filled with people who had made my life miserable. Of course, I didn't need those things in my new home either. When I told him I had already sold them, he still demanded, buy them back right now. It's impossible. You, working at a big corporation, should be able to buy them yourself." After saying that, I hung up the phone. That day, Aaron called many times, but I ignored all his calls. Months after they returned from the trip, I had almost forgotten my old life, getting along well with my neighbors and enjoying myself. One day, invited by a friend living on a lower floor, I went to a cooking class. Suddenly, Aaron called, and, though suspicious, I answered, thinking there might be an issue with the paperwork. As soon as I answered, Aaron shouted, "What's going on here?" It was like the day they returned from the trip. Wondering what else could have upset him aside from the furniture and appliances. I listened closely, and it turned out he had just realized the amount of the mortgage repayment. He had panicked after opening a letter at home, which stated that the mortgage repayment was $2,300 per month. Wasn't the mortgage already paid off? That's impossible. The bank explained everything, didn't they? That's a lie. I didn't hear it. And there was supposed to be fire insurance and your savings, so why didn't you pay off the mortgage? No, how could I? How much do you think that house was worth? Surprisingly, Aaron thought the mortgage had been fully paid off, despite the careful explanations we received. And Aaron had nodded along after hearing the amounts. I remember well because I was sitting right beside him. Even if Aaron ignored the conversations, it's too late now because he's already signed the mortgage change. He tried to avoid paying the mortgage afterward, but there's nothing I can do about that. Eventually, it seems he realized that he has to make the payments. And he remained silent in frustration. And here I thought you'd be struggling to find a place to live. The only reason Aaron had access to his full salary before was because I was covering all the living expenses. Now that we're divorced, I have no issues living on my own. It's too late for him to realize that he was depending on me for everything. I wonder what kind of life my pretentious ex-husband has been living with his parents these past few months. They were probably indulging in luxuries at my sister-in-law's behest. And then they discovered they had a mortgage to pay. I thought about their situation as if it were none of my business. After all, we are strangers now, whatever trouble Aaron and his parents get into is none of my concern. However, I decided to tell Aaron the truth as he seemed so defeated. Too bad. I moved to a high-rise condo with the money I made from successful investments. I hung up while Aaron was still speechless. There were no calls from him after that, so I assumed he managed somehow. But then he called again out of the blue. When I answered, thinking what now, he panically explained that the house had been seized. I could hear Aaron's parents and sister panicking in the background, apparently in a desperate situation. What should I do? Help me, Courtney. Aaron, who had driven me out, was pathetically clinging to me for help. An enforcement officer was inspecting the house. And I could hear Aaron's parents and sister addressing the officer. The officer explained that the house would be set for auction soon, with all necessary details like the auction date and period to be determined. Once the auctioneer was decided and ownership transferred, Aaron and his family would be evicted. I figured they must have received notices before it came to this, but when I asked Aaron, he confusingly said they hadn't arrived. However, after persistently asking, he finally admitted in a quiet voice, maybe they did arrive. It turned out Aaron knew the contents were related to the mortgage repayment and had intentionally ignored them. The envelope was already open before I saw it. So, I thought someone had already paid it. Probably, Aaron's parents and sister thought the same. It seems they knew about the demands for immediate full repayment of the loan but ignored them, hoping someone else would pay. Finally, the house was seized. can't you somehow make the payment now? Like, combining everyone's savings or something? I inadvertently offered advice as Aaron sounded so pitiful. However, all he could repeat was, "It's impossible." Apparently, his parents had blown through their savings on a lavish trip abroad, and were planning to rely on their son, who they thought was working at a big company, for their future lives, a mere assumption. And the sister-in-law's claim about quitting her job and coming back from the city was a lie. She had actually been fired for embezzling company money. Despite boasting about her success in the city, she had only been working as an accountant at a small company, earning a modest salary. Yet she got hooked on a guy at a nightclub and embezzled money little by little to fund her habit. She actually returned home depending on her parents. Yet she had the nerve to make such grand claims. As for Aaron, since our divorce, he had been depleting his savings to maintain the lie that he worked for a big company and to cover living expenses. Both Aaron's parents and sister had been living a life of luxury, and the savings Aaron had accumulated while married to me were completely gone. Then came the demand for immediate repayment of the mortgage. Financial secrets they had all kept were now coming to light, and it seemed like the blame game had started, shifting from the courts to each other. Amidst this, Aaron was clinging to me. "Please, Courtney. You're living in a high-rise condo now, right? Let's all live together there again." "No, thank you. We're divorced now, and you guys are strangers to me." I felt a bit of sympathy for Aaron's situation earlier, but I would never live with those people again. Hearing his parents' and sister's voices in the background, I firmly thought this. And I clearly rejected Aaron's request. As soon as I did, I could hear his parents and sister start berating me immediately, calling me inhuman, a swindler, a thief. Possibly out of spite for being rejected, Aaron joined his parents and sister in hurling insults at me. The phone was unbearably noisy, despite their own actions leading to this situation. There was no sign of remorse from Aaron and his family. Eventually, they started blaming each other, and I decided to have nothing more to do with these people, quietly hanging up the phone and blocking Aaron's number. A few days later, I spotted a concerning headline in the newspaper. A father and son were fighting, and the police had to intervene. It seemed to be about Aaron and his father. I contacted a mutual acquaintance who lived near Aaron's family to confirm, and indeed, the newspaper article was about them, describing events that happened after I hung up the phone. The article mentioned that a neighbor had called the police when they noticed the fight, and Aaron and his family were taken away by the police. The father and son, who had fought, along with the mother and sister who tried to intervene, all suffered injuries that would take about 2 weeks to heal. They were severely warned by the police and released. But with the incident published in the newspaper, though not fired, Aaron was sternly reprimanded at work. The cause of the parent-child fight gained various embellishments and spread quickly within the company. Aaron felt uncomfortable at work but couldn't quit because he needed the money. Eventually, a buyer for the house was found, and Aaron and his family were evicted. They managed to move, but it was to an old, cramped, bug-infested apartment, far from comparable to the house they had. They began their new life there as a family of 4. Every day, bugs appeared in the apartment, and Aaron's sister and mother caused so much commotion that they already received complaints from neighbors. Aaron tried to find a new place to rent and started working, but his parents and sister quickly caused trouble at their jobs and were fired. Especially the sister-in-law, whose past of embezzling company money became widely known, struggled to find new employment. It seems they'll have to live solely on Aaron's income for the foreseeable future. Aaron has been trying to find out where I live. asking acquaintances persistently enough that they warned me to be careful. Even if Aaron found my condo, he would only be turned away by the concierge always on duty. I gratefully accepted the advice from the acquaintance and asked the concierge to be on the lookout. This finally marked the end of the turmoil with Aaron and his family. It hasn't been a year since I left that house, but it already feels like a distant past event. I've fully adapted to life in the high-rise condo, enjoying my hobbies and work every day. I plan to enjoy my carefree solo living for a while without getting married again.